We start with the just unbelievable finish to a tremendous college basketball NCAA tournament run. Baylor knocks out, absolutely blows the doors off Gonzaga 86-70 to win the NCAA title, claiming their first ever national title in Baylor Bears program history. But the real question is, how will this game be remembered? Because that was really the question that flooded to the surface of my mind right at its conclusion. The first thought was Baylor might be the quickest team that I've ever seen when it comes to college basketball. When you look at the pace that they play, or at least in a long time watching college basketball, the pace that they play is unparalleled. Their guards are extremely athletic, extremely explosive. Jared Butler was fantastic, winning the tournament's most outstanding player, scored 20.7 assists in the championship game. Those stat lines hadn't been recorded since Carmelo Anthony did it with Syracuse when they won the tournament in 2003. So you have Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, who was fantastic, almost reminds me of a smaller Donovan Mitchell in the NBA. You had Maceo Teague hitting down threes. Their bigs are strong, versatile. This is a team that plays aggressively, just hellacious defense. They suffocated the Zags right from opening tip. Did not give them any airspace whatsoever. Right from opening jump, this game was over. 9-0 quickly in the first couple of minutes. Next thing you know, it's 11-1, 16-4. You look up, it's 23-8, and next thing you know, 29-10. It was just an avalanche of threes, turnovers, defensive prowess being displayed by the Baylor Bears. And the speed and activity, again, the hands of Baylor, I don't think Gonzaga was clearly not ready for from start to finish in this game. They were not prepared to handle just the attentiveness of this Baylor Bears team and how in tune they were with what their assignments are, how aggressive they're supposed to play. And they played with a swagger and a confidence right from the beginning that shook Gonzaga to its very core in a way that really hadn't tested them since they played UCLA just a couple nights ago. And this is not to take away from Baylor and the Bears, because the run that they had, and it's almost unfair, because when you think about really good college basketball teams and you think about which teams coming into the season were projected to reach the championship game, Baylor was ranked number 2 all season, and yet somehow they found themselves as massive underdogs coming into this contest. They were doubted coming into this contest, yet they were the number 2 team ranked in college basketball all season long. And this is not to diminish what they accomplished, nor is it to take a shot at Gonzaga, because I'm going to give them a tremendous amount of credit. But to me, when you look at Gonzaga, unfortunately, this game came at the worst possible time for them, because whether or not they want to admit it, they were physically, mentally, and emotionally spent from that overtime thriller against UCLA. They had nothing left in the tank. They exhausted everything they had. They emptied their entire tank. Meanwhile, Baylor coasted to a win over Houston, and it was never even close. And I'm not saying that with a week's rest, they would have necessarily come out a little sharper, but I do think that what we saw is the lack of depth on their roster, on their team. They really play only 5 guys. Technically, they're 7 guys deep. They really only play 5 guys, all 5 of their starters, and that showed. And when you look at this team in college basketball specifically, whenever we recall historically great teams and we recall iconic moments and legendary performances by players, ones that leave indelible marks in our minds, they're usually followed up by an NCAA title. You think about in 1982, Michael Jordan with North Carolina, when the Tar Heels beat Georgetown in the NCAA championship against Patrick Ewing and those boys. Michael Jordan hit the game-winning shot to propel Carolina to that 63-62 win. He hit that shot with under 20 seconds remaining. That iced the game and iced the championship for North Carolina. In 1992, Christian Laettner's shot sinking Kentucky in the Elite Eight. That was a shot en route to winning the NCAA title for Duke and Mike Krzyzewski's first as a head coach. In 2008, Kansas against Memphis. Remember these incredible teams? Derrick Rose with Memphis. This was actually John Calipari's Memphis Tigers team. They led by 3, under 10 seconds remaining. Kansas dribbles it up the floor. It's a broken play. Ball finds its way into the hands of Mario Chalmers, who somehow sinks a clutch three-pointer to send the game into overtime, and Kansas ultimately won the NCAA title. In 2016, Chris Jenkins with Villanova over North Carolina to win the championship for Villanova. That's typically what we see these iconic moments followed up with, is a championship. And as great as Jalen Suggs, his buzzer beater was, as great as his buzzer beater was, and as iconic of a moment, and to me, it's the second greatest shot in NCAA tournament history. And as much as it will leave an indelible mark in my mind, not only as a UCLA fan, but as a college basketball fan, as incredible as it was, unfortunately, it's been marred now by their poor showing against Baylor in the NCAA tournament final, in the championship game. Because it's not just the fact that they lost. Teams lose all the time. Good teams lose all the time. It's the manner and the fashion in which you lose. That, to me, was the very first thought that came to the forefront of my mind when this game concluded, when the buzzer sounded, is it's not just the fact that Gonzaga's quest for a perfect season came up short. It's that now the sheen and the coating of that shot seemed to just rub off a little bit. It's a little bit more tinted now because they couldn't complete it with an NCAA title. And again, it's not always about winning the title. It's about not coming out flat, putting your best effort, putting your best foot forward. And I'm not saying that they didn't, because Baylor, again, deserves all the credit in the world. But when you see those types of iconic moments, those types of iconic shots, they're supposed to be followed up by a title. They deserve to be followed up by a national championship. And unfortunately, we were deprived of that. We did not get to see that. And so that was my first thought when I think back to that shot, and when I was watching the buzzer sound, it was less about congratulations to Baylor, although that is what I should be thinking. But it was more, damn, if Gonzaga had just found a way to ignite themselves one more time and find a way to complete this season after following up the performance they had against UCLA. Now that would go down in the history books, because that shot deserves to go down in NCAA tournament history lore. And it will, but it won't have the same magnitude behind it as it could have had, like the Christian Laettner shot, like the Mario Chalmers, like the Michael Jordan, like the Chris Jenkins shot, if Gonzaga could have completed and capped off their season with a title. So that's the biggest shame to me. That was the thought that I had that came to my mind, was it's just such a shame that a team that had such a tremendous season, this is no knock against Gonzaga. Listen, they went 31-1. They won their first 31 games in a row. That is an incredible feat for a team, for a school, and a program that's been overlooked in the West Coast Conference. It's a smaller market, Spokane, Washington, and they've been doubted the entire season. And what they're showing is that they are more than capable of competing against the powerhouses and the blue bloods in college basketball. But this was their time. And that moment seemed to kind of cinch up that notion that this was destiny for them to win. In a year unlike any other, They could have become the first team to go undefeated in a season since Indiana State did it in 1976. They came up extremely close. They got really close, just came up a little bit short. And that was the unfortunate reality. But again, congratulations to Baylor. It was a tremendous tournament. The closest that any team ever got to Baylor in this tournament was 9 points, Arkansas. So they were dominant throughout the entire tournament. And Drew Scott has a tremendous program there in Waco. And they've got some really talented players. And they prove that taking on transfer kids and retaining kids for long stretches into their upperclassmen days can be effective, can work. But that was the thought when I saw that game, was just, damn, Gonzaga really had an opportunity here, and now that shot will no longer be remembered quite the same way as it could have been if it was capped off with an NCAA championship.